What happens when a television host who prides herself on sharp opinions tries to dismiss a comedian whose greatest strength is connecting with ordinary people? The result is a conversation that takes an unexpected turn, proving that confidence doesn't always come from having the loudest voice. Sometimes it comes from years of experience, patience, and the ability to answer criticism with grace instead of anger. What you're about to read captures one of those unforgettable daytime television moments. Joy Behar believed she could reduce Leanne Morgan's success to simple jokes about small-town life. Instead, she found herself facing someone who had spent decades winning over audiences one laugh at a time. Rather than becoming defensive, Leanne relied on her trademark warmth, turning what could have been an uncomfortable exchange into a memorable display of quick wit. The audience responded immediately, and the mood inside the studio shifted in a way few expected. The morning had begun like any other taping. Crew members moved quickly around the studio. Hosts prepared their notes, and the audience buzzed with excitement. There was a special energy in the room because Leanne Morgan was visiting the show. She wasn't the typical Hollywood celebrity, but she had become one of the biggest names in comedy. Her Netflix special had introduced millions of viewers to her storytelling style, and her nationwide tours were selling out theaters and arenas. After years of persistence, she had become one of America's most recognizable comedians. Despite her growing fame, Leanne arrived exactly as fans imagined she would. She greeted security guards by name after introducing herself, thanked every member of the makeup team, and happily chatted with a young production assistant about family recipes and Southern cooking. She treated everyone she met with genuine kindness, never acting like she was above anyone else. It was the same approachable personality that had earned her loyal fans across the country. When she finally walked onto the famous panel set, she smiled from ear to ear. Her Tennessee accent filled the studio as she greeted each host with sincere enthusiasm. "Oh my goodness," she laughed. "I am so excited to be here. I've watched this show for years. My mama isn't going to believe I'm sitting at this table." The audience responded with warm applause. There was something refreshing about someone who wasn't trying to appear glamorous or mysterious. Leanne simply looked grateful to be part of the conversation. Whoopi Goldberg welcomed her warmly, highlighting her remarkable rise in comedy and congratulating her on the success of her Netflix special and sold-out tours. Leanne waved appreciatively before joking that the audience felt like family. "It feels like a reunion," she laughed. "Except nobody's asked why I'm still single. Oh, wait, I am married. 33 years. Some days I still just call him Hey and hope he answers." The crowd burst into laughter. It was classic Leanne, self-deprecating, relatable, and effortlessly funny. As the interview continued, Sarah Haynes asked about her long journey to success. Leanne explained how she had spent decades performing in church basements, community centers, charity events, and small clubs before finally receiving widespread recognition later in life. "I always tell people it's never too late," she said. "Those church ladies taught me everything I needed to know about comedy. If you can make a room full of Baptist women laugh about menopause, you can probably make anybody laugh." The audience applauded once again. Then the conversation shifted. Joy Behar leaned forward with a skeptical smile. "So, Leanne," she began, "your comedy is very regional. It's about Walmart, casseroles, and small-town life. Don't you think that's a little limiting? Shouldn't comedy challenge people instead of simply making them comfortable?" The question carried a noticeable edge. Leanne never lost her smile. "Well, Joy," she replied calmly. "My mama always used to say that some people can get so busy sounding smart that they forget what connects and people in the first place." The audience chuckled. Then she continued gently. "I've always believed the hardest thing a comedian can do isn't telling complicated jokes. It's taking a very specific story from your own life and making complete strangers see themselves in it. Whether someone grew up in Tennessee, New York, or California, everybody has a family, awkward moments, and memories that make them laugh. That's what I'm trying to share. The audience answered with enthusiastic applause, appreciating both her humor and her thoughtful response. Rather than meeting criticism with sarcasm or hostility, Leanne had demonstrated exactly why her comedy resonated with so many people. It wasn't about where someone came from. It was about finding the shared experiences that bring everyone together. When I tell stories about Walmart, I'm not really talking about a store, Leanne said with an easy smile. I'm talking about community. When I joke about casseroles, I'm talking about the way people show love without needing fancy words. And when I tell stories about small-town life, I'm talking about experiences millions of people recognize, the kind that don't always make it into television. Shows written by people who've never spent much time outside major cities. She delivered every word so gently that it took a second for the audience to notice the quiet sting beneath the kindness, Joy. Behar's smile stiffened. That's certainly one way to frame it, Joy replied. But let's be honest. Your audience is mostly Middle America, isn't it? People who share similar backgrounds and viewpoints. Do you ever worry you're simply telling people what they already want to hear instead of challenging them? The question shifted the atmosphere around the table. A few audience members exchanged glances, sensing the conversation had taken a sharper turn. Leanne tilted her head slightly, never losing her relaxed expression. Joy. I've been doing comedy for more than 30 years, she answered. I've performed everywhere, from tiny church fellowship halls and county fairs to packed theaters and arenas. I've entertained audiences from all walks of life. And you know what I've learned? People have far more in common than they realize. She paused before continuing. A mother in Manhattan juggling work and raising children. Isn't all that different from a mother doing the exact same thing in Tennessee? They both worry about their families. They both laugh at life's little disasters. They both go to bed wondering if they're doing enough. My job isn't to separate people into different groups. My job is to remind them we're all trying to get through life together. The audience applauded warmly. Leanne leaned forward just a little. I don't know what comedy looked like when you first started, she continued, but I've always believed the best jokes bring people together. They don't make people feel embarrassed about where they live or how they grew up. Maybe that's not everyone's definition of sophisticated comedy, but judging by the audiences I meet every night, a lot of folks appreciate leaving a show feeling happier than when they walked in. The applause grew louder. Joy wasn't finished. I'm simply saying. There's a difference between being popular and being great, she replied. Fast food is popular too, but nobody mistakes it for fine dining. Without missing a beat, Leanne laughed. Joy, did you just compare my comedy to fast food? She asked, grinning. Honey, I've survived tougher reviews than that. My mother-in-law once told me my brisket tasted like I'd cooked it with a lawnmower. She announced it right in the middle of Easter dinner. You're going to have to do a little better if you're hoping to hurt my feelings. The audience erupted in laughter. Leanne smiled as the applause settled. But honestly, she added, I think it's a little unfair to assume that stories about everyday Americans somehow matter less. The people I write jokes about work hard, raise families, care for neighbors, and help each other through difficult times. Their lives deserve to be laughed about just as much as anyone else's. Joy narrowed her eyes. Are you saying I look down on people? Leanne chuckled softly. Oh, I'm not here to tell anybody what they think, she replied. I'm a comedian, not a counselor. But I have noticed something over the years. Sometimes the people who spend the most time trying to prove how sophisticated they are also the ones working hardest to convince themselves. A surprised murmur spread through the audience. Leanne kept her tone warm. You know what's interesting, Joy? We've spent several minutes talking about whether my comedy measures up to someone else's idea of what comedy should be. But audiences don't buy tickets because they're looking for approval from critics. They buy tickets because they want to laugh, forget their worries for a while, and feel like somebody understands their lives. She turned briefly toward the audience. My mama always told me you can say almost anything kindly if you remember your manners. She'd usually finish with, "Bless your heart," but when somehow everyone still smiled. The crowd laughed again. So if someone thinks where I come from makes me less interesting. Leanne continued, well, bless their heart. I've spent decades handling tough crowds, noisy bars, and every kind of heckler imaginable. One television interview isn't going to shake me. The room filled with applause. Joy shook her head. This is getting away from the point, she said. I'm trying to have a serious discussion about comedy, Leanne answered calmly. Or maybe you're disappointed I'm not reacting the way you expected. If someone walks into a conversation expecting another person to feel small, they're usually surprised when kindness turns out to be stronger than criticism. Whoopi Goldberg gently tried to redirect the discussion toward Leanne's upcoming tour and recent success, but the exchange had already become the moment everyone in the studio would remember. Joy leaned forward and asked, "What does your comedy actually change?" Leanne smiled thoughtfully instead of reacting defensively. She nodded as if the question deserved a genuine answer. You know what? That's a fair question, she said. What does my comedy change? She paused for a moment, and when she spoke again, her tone became softer and more sincere. Last week, I received an email from a woman in Ohio. She's been going through chemotherapy. She told me that during some of her hardest treatment days, she watched my comedy specials because they were the only thing that could make her laugh. She said those laughs gave her enough strength to face another appointment. If my comedy changed anything, it changed that moment for her. The audience grew noticeably quieter. A few months ago, Leanne continued, I got a letter from a widower in Texas. His wife and he watched my shows together for years. After she passed away, he started watching those same specials alone, because hearing the jokes reminded him of her laughter. For an hour, he felt like she was sitting beside him again. That mattered to him. The room was completely silent now. And then I met a young woman after a show in Nashville. She admitted she had been in a very dark place before coming to the performance. She hoped laughter might help, and afterward she decided to reach out for support. She's doing much better today. I'm not taking credit for saving anyone's life, but if one evening of laughter helped someone choose hope instead of despair, I'll never apologize for what I do. She looked directly at Joy. Those people matter. Their struggles matter. If my simple comedy gives ordinary people 1 hour to forget their burdens and smile, I'd say that's pretty important. The audience erupted into heartfelt applause. Leanne waited for the room to settle before continuing. You know what I've noticed? Sometimes the people who think they're above everyone else spend the least amount of time actually connecting with them. It's easy to judge from a distance. It's much harder to stand in a meet and greet line, hold someone's hand while they cry, or listen to a veteran tell you your jokes reminded him why his family was worth fighting for. Her voice remained warm, but carried unmistakable conviction. I'm not trying to change the world. I'm simply trying to make difficult days a little easier. At the end of our lives, people won't remember how sophisticated we sounded. They'll remember how we made them feel. Joy's expression tightened. I don't need a lecture, she replied sharply, especially from someone who tells jokes about menopause and minivans. Leanne laughed gently. Oh, Joy, you're missing the point. Those jokes aren't really about menopause. They're about women reaching a stage where they stop worrying about everyone else's approval. The minivan jokes aren't about cars. They're about the beautiful, messy reality of raising a family. There's meaning underneath the humor if you're willing to look for it. She smiled sympathetically. Sometimes people dismiss everyday lives because they think ordinary experiences aren't meaningful. But they are. Families, friendships, heartbreak, and resilience deserve to be celebrated just as much as anything else. Joy stood abruptly, her chair scraping across the studio floor. I'm not going to sit here and be analyzed by someone making jokes about Cracker Barrel. You don't have to, Leanne answered calmly. But I will say this. I've told those jokes to sold-out arenas full of people who simply wanted to laugh together. Joy accused her of being unprofessional. Leanne simply smiled. No, I just refuse to be embarrassed by where I come from, or the people who enjoy my work. Turning to the audience, she added, That's why I love comedy. Laughter has a way of bringing people together, and I'd rather spend my life doing that than dividing people. The audience responded with a standing ovation as Joy walked away, leaving the studio in stunned silence. The studio fell into stunned silence as Joy turned toward the exit. This wasn't how interviews on daytime television were supposed to end. Guests occasionally stormed off, but hosts almost never did. Yet there she was, walking away while the audience watched in disbelief. Joy, wait! Leanne's voice was gentle, carrying the same calm warmth that had defined the conversation from the beginning. Joy stopped. She turned slowly, her expression caught somewhere between frustration and uncertainty. There's something I want you to know before you leave, Leanne said quietly. The room became so still that every word seemed to echo. I don't have any hard feelings toward you. The sincerity in her voice was impossible to miss. She wasn't delivering a clever comeback or trying to score one final point. She genuinely meant it. I've been doing this long enough to know that criticism comes with the job. Not everybody is going to understand what I do, and that's okay. Joy remained silent. But I hope that someday you'll realize there's room in this world for every kind of comedy. There's comedy that challenges people intellectually, and there's comedy that comforts people after a hard day. One isn't automatically better than the other. They're simply different ways of serving an audience. Leanne smiled warmly. And if you ever decided to come to one of my shows, I'd love to have you there. I honestly think you'd be surprised. A few audience members chuckled softly. You might discover we're not nearly as simple as you think we are. We just don't spend all our time trying to prove how smart we are. She shrugged playfully. Where I come from, we call that grace. Joy seemed almost caught off guard by the kindness. She had clearly expected another argument, another sharp remark, another reason to fire back. Instead, she was met with compassion. For a brief moment, she looked as though she wanted to say something. Instead, she simply turned and walked off the stage. Whoopi looked around the studio, momentarily speechless. Well, she finally said, with an awkward laugh, I don't think any of us saw that coming. The audience laughed nervously. Leanne simply smiled. You know what my mama always used to tell me? She asked. Everyone leaned in. She'd say, Never wrestle with a pig. You both end up covered in mud. But the pig enjoys it. The audience burst into laughter. She raised both hands with a grin. Now, before anybody misunderstands me, I'm not calling Joy a pig. That wouldn't be kind. The laughter grew louder. My point is that sometimes the best way to win an argument isn't to fight at all. Sometimes you just stay calm, treat people with respect, and let your actions speak louder than your words. She turned toward the camera, addressing viewers at home. To everyone watching, thank you for supporting me over the years. I'll be traveling all over the country this year, and I'd love for you to come laugh with us. Her smile softened. We'll laugh together, maybe cry a little together too, and remind ourselves that life is hard for everyone sometimes. None of us have all the answers. We're just ordinary people trying to do the best we can. And sometimes sharing a laugh makes that journey a little easier. The audience rose to its feet in a standing ovation that lasted well over a minute. What they had witnessed wasn't simply a heated television exchange. They had watched someone refuse to answer anger with anger. Instead of escalating the conflict, Leanne had answered criticism with patience, confidence, and kindness. In the days that followed, clips from the interview spread rapidly across social media. Millions of viewers shared Leanne's thoughtful responses, praising her composure and the respect she showed even in disagreement. Many people who had never seen her stand up before began watching her comedy and discovered why audiences connected so deeply with her storytelling. The conversation soon grew beyond one television appearance. It became a broader discussion about different styles of comedy, different measures of success, and the many ways entertainers connect with audiences. Leanne's message resonated with countless viewers. Humor doesn't have to be cruel to be memorable, and confidence doesn't require putting someone else down. Sometimes the strongest response isn't the loudest one. Sometimes true strength is refusing to play someone else's game while remaining true to yourself. What do you think? Did Leanne handle the situation the right way, or should the conversation have ended differently? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories and unforgettable moments.